Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ask Dr. Be Good show, where we try to bring you the good things that are going on in public education. And we've been lucky enough to be able to tap into a resource that's been in our own backyard for the last almost 8 years.
Yes.
We will have been together 8 years. And so tell a little bit about who you are.
Byron Ricks. I'm a president and chair of Legacy Charter for almost about 8 years.
October will be 8 years.
October will be 8 years. And we went from meeting in Starbucks to having a very nice meeting room in 2 beautiful campuses, and just celebrated our second graduation.
That's
with
right.
2 of our students graduating with associate degrees.
That's exactly right.
So I'm happy about that. But I'm also the president of Ricks Creative Consulting, and I'm the author of Searching for Dad.
And that is a book about your life.
That is a book, in essence, about me growing up fatherless, but not just me. I did 5 years of research on that book before I wrote the book. I've had countless interviews all over the United States, because at the time I wrote the book, I was a professional speaker and trainer, and I've traveled through all 50 states within the United States. And in each state, I've had conversations with men, women, children, teenagers, those that have had fathers, those that have not. And so I came up with the 9 side effects. So the book is, yes, it's about my life, but it really validated what I felt, and also helped me define some of the things that I was feeling and not really knowing what they were or how to define them. Others helped me to define those.
So you're a behavior specialist, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have, through talking with others across the country who grew up without fathers, you have picked up a pattern of behavior from them that caused you to come up with the 9 steps?
Yes, I picked up a pattern of behaviors from them, and behaviors that I had myself and was not able to identify, if you will. And I also spoke with men and boys and that had fathers, because one of the things that I talk about in the book that I've learned, when a father is not present, whether that father is not present due to death, due to divorce, through to just never being there because they weren't with the mother after conception, if that father's not in the home, what we learn is the side effects are the same. I learned that the side effects are the same regardless of the socioeconomic status of that boy. That boy could be from a wealthy home or middle-class home or a lower economic home. That side effect still is the same. So if the kid is on welfare and doesn't have a dad, and the kid is, parents are well off, and the dad is just working so hard, he's never home, he's traveling all the time, they still suffer some of the same side effects.
So you write in your book, boys without fathers feel incomplete. Consciously or not, boys will try to fill the void. This can manifest itself in many ways: promiscuity, pornography, violent behavior, drugs and alcohol, associating with the wrong crowd, and other behaviors that give them short-term fulfillment. So we're going to really focus on the void left behind today,
Okay.
and what happens when there's a void. So tell us more about the void. For example, the definition of void.
Right. Well, you know, the void, the definition, and there are several definitions, but the one that resonates with me and the one that I used to base the void on and writing about the void it's a noun, and it says that it's open, coming from Merriam-Webster. It's opening, gap, empty space, emptiness, vacuum. The quality or state of being without something, lack, absence, a feeling of want or hollowness.
And how did you come to identify this side effect?
I used to lay in my bed and I would look at the ceiling. Couldn't sleep, and I felt what this definition says. I felt there was a gap, there's an emptiness. I felt there was something missing. I think I remember in one of our sessions, I talked about when my father came to visit, and he picked me up, and the security that I felt, and the warmness that I felt, and the exacerbation. I was just so happy, and then my mother tore me from it, in a sense, not physically, but asked me to get down, and when he put me down, and as my father walked away, this void is the first time I can identify having felt it. And I was about 5 then, but I'm fast forwarding now as I'm 10 and I'm laying in the bed, and that's the feeling that I'm having. I'm having this hollowness, this emptiness. Even though my mother continued to try to assure me that everything was okay, I felt something was missing.
Did you ever try to explain that feeling to your mother?
No, I did not try to explain that feeling to my mother. My mother, a couple things. My mother was old school. Never, you hear that word thrown around a lot, but my mother was a really born and raised Alabama girl, strict, and she didn't have those kind of conversations at that time. And I was, again, when I was a kid. Now, I will say, as I grew older and my mother grew wiser, I was able to sit down and have conversations with her, but in those early years, I was not.
So you talk about short-term fulfillment. What does that mean? That some of these behaviors that the void manifests
Right.
Are short-term fulfillment. What do you mean by that?
Well, Dr. Gill, you're in the school business, we're in the school business, and we know that one of the things that happens with kids, and I have a 6-year-old granddaughter, and she would tell me in a heartbeat, I'm bored. They get bored. And then when they get bored, they tend to be attracted to other things, right?
Especially something they shouldn't do?
Exactly. That's usually the case, right? And so with young boys and with me, that I had this void, and what happens is, as I would fill this void with other things. Now, as a young boy, and I did football or baseball, and I did things, and I enjoyed things, and that kept my mind off of the void, off of what I was feeling, what I was thinking. But it's short term, because at the point you stop doing with the thing that you're doing, or the point that you're alone, the point that you become bored, if you will, you feel that void again. And you don't like that feeling. You don't want to do that.
So we're not really talking days or weeks or months. We're talking about when whatever your activity has kept you not thinking about what's going on inside your heart, however long that lasts.
However long that lasts. Right. It's sort of, if you think about it, and it's like drugs in a sense, that, a drug addict feels great when the drugs are in their system and they're working, or the alcoholic, they're where they want to be psychologically, but at the point the substance wears off, they wake up, the pain they had, the animosity they felt, or whatever that feeling is there again. And so in order to get rid of it again, they shoot up again, they drink again, or they take a pill again, or they do whatever that activity is that helps them to forget what they don't want to remember, don't want to think about.
So are you saying that they get addicted to fulfilling the void?
I'm saying that they, unlike a drug addict, at some point a drug addict knows he or she is a drug addict, and they actively seek that such that they can be fulfilled, if you will. But with a young boy, he's not cognizant of that. He is feeling a void, and he then acts out. Now, I was fortunate enough that I was in Catholic schools, and I went to Catholic school, and in the inner city, and that school was very active. So I was on the football team, wasn't very good. I was on the basketball team, so I wasn't tall enough or big enough to be good at it. And so I joined the speech and debate team. And at the end of the year, I had trophies in speech and debate, from speech and debate, but the basketball and the football team didn't because they weren't very good. and so I guess where I'm going with this is, in the inner city, a lot of the activities that are available to boys tends to be activities that are not necessarily constructive, that are not necessarily positive, and the kids all are bored, many of them. And so I've sat with boys, and they've thought of things to do. I remember vividly, I was out one Saturday, hanging out with some kids in the neighborhood, and this handyman was there, and he was repairing something, and he had in his truck a book, a phone book. It was a leather-bound book. It was old. It had much more stuff in it than it needed to have, and he had rubber bands around it. And one of the kids said, "Well, let's take this book." And I remember thinking, why would we want to hurt the man? Why would we want to do that? But as soon as one kid said that, the other kid said, "Yeah, somehow that seemed like fun." And it was just the adrenaline that began to flow in the moment. And they indeed did go in and went through the guy's window. They took his book and they ran down with it. Now, this wasn't a wallet. It had no money in it.
No value.
It had no value
to
them,
you guys.
to us.
No.
And I remember this old guy, he just started chasing us, but he couldn't catch us. And then he just stopped and he just literally started crying because we had taken his book. And he said, "You guys are taking, you've taken my life, my contacts. You've taken my work. You just don't know what you've done to me." And the man started crying. And I remember feeling so awful.
Tell me you gave the book back.
Well, honestly, there was more of them than me, but I did get on them about it, and I said, "What do you guys take the man's book?" And we went back and forth. So what he did do, he threw the book in the alley. He just threw it down, and things scattered everywhere. And then I said, "Well, let's run." Well, I knew that if we ran, even though the book was, scattered in the alley, at least he could retrieve his things. So, but that kind of influence is what a lot of inner city kids get. And luckily for me, I wasn't exposed in that way as often because most of my time was spent doing activities through the Catholic school.
Do you think that many of the men in prison come from single-parent homes? You think that kind of behavior, ultimately, they paid a price for?
There's goodness gracious, documentary after documentary after documentary on men in prison, and I'm watching one now on Netflix that's interviewing men in prison, and every last man, I won't say every last man because there was maybe one, but 9 out of 10 men, regardless of their ethnic breakup, when they sat down and interviewed them, every last one of them said, "I didn't have a father." Every last one to the T, except I say one or two who did have a father. But get this, the ones who did have a father, more often than not, said their father was abusive. There was one female inmate that said, "I came from an upper middle class home, and my family are baffled at why I'm here because they did nothing wrong. They treated me well. I did this all on my own." That was the only one that I heard that admitted that, and that was a female in prison.
So unfortunately, these kind of behaviors do lead to lifelong impacts for our young people, which is why we're here, which is why we're trying to inform our parents about the need to, well, first to recognize if they have kids in single parent homes, to recognize some of the side effects of it, and then some of the things that can be done. So you pointed out the many activities that boys can participate in the void. Most that you mentioned were destructive. Are there any positive, constructive things that can fill the void?
there are many, and as I stated earlier, I was fortunate enough, though grew up in the inner city in the west side of Chicago. I was fortunate enough that my mother was able to send me to a Catholic school environment that afforded me the opportunity to engage in positive and constructive things, and I think that mothers in the inner cities or in the rural areas, you have to be active and diligent about YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, camp, church camp, whatever kind of camp there is, that you have to get that kid active in something other than hanging out in the neighborhood, And also, even get this, you have kids in upper middle class families, and they do have access, and they get involved in art, entertainment, music, acting, sports, And one of the things that happens in inner city, especially for African American youth, and I've talked to so many of them, they all somehow believe that they're going to be this star athlete,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And I think you and I were somewhere not long ago, and this young man was, maybe it wasn't you, but I was just somewhere not long ago, and this kid, he was about 12, and he was going to be a star basketball player. Well, he's 12, he's right at puberty, and he was, 5'7"?
Mm.
You're probably not going to be, I mean, it's a funny thing, though. They will point at the Spud Webbs of the world, but, that's the exception. And,
Anomalies, yeah.
Anomaly, thank you, not the rule. And so they get caught and bent on and caught up in the thought or idea of being this athlete. And so what I'm saying to the mothers and to the aunties and to the uncles, help them to, play ball. Put them in there to play ball. And the best thing that happened to me was I played ball and realized I wasn't that good.
Okay.
That was one of the best things that happened to me. But also, I got into speech, I got into debate, okay, and I was good at that. So allow them to play that, but divert them into something else as well that they can do. There's so many other things they can do, because at the end of the day, it's about keeping the mind active and keeping the mind busy so they don't think about these other things.
And one of the things that we have to say to, especially our secondary kids who really still believe that they're going to be stars, is that they need to know reading, writing, and math so they don't get cheated when they make the big bucks.
Bingo.
And there's lots of research out there about so many of our young men and who made it big, very young, and then went bust broke.
Right. I'm not going to do it, but I could sit here right now and name basketball stars that you would know, people would know, who their financial planner or some accountant have ripped them off, and up to, the one not long goes up to $90,000. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, $90 million. So they're losing millions and millions of dollars because they don't understand business, they don't understand finance, they had no interest in that. They had interest in playing ball. In fact, what else you see is in sports, whether it be boxing, whether it be the football, basketball, baseball, the great ones. There are a few exceptions. Magic Johnson is an exception. Michael Jordan is an exception. Is they have no life after whatever sport they're in, because they had no other interest. You don't see it as often today because there are more opportunities today in social media and to be on ESPN or the different talk shows. You see athletes who have other lives, but you still have a plethora of them who don't know how to do anything else.
So, in your experience, what influences a boy to get involved in positive construction activities or negative construction, destructive activities?
Well, for me, okay, I was a church-going boy. I say that not to promote any specific belief or religion, but I do want to promote belief in in a power greater than you. Because if you think about it for a moment, if there's no power greater than me, and I'm in a situation with no father, a working mother and siblings, and I'm living, day to day and paycheck to paycheck from my mom, and if I am it, then that is a sad narrative, because I have no one to talk to, I have nowhere to go. So two things. One is, I believe you have to have belief in a power greater than you, such that you can find solace, and you can meditate, you can pray, you can reach into something and believe in something that can help you through what you're dealing with. Two, you have to have someone in your life that's positive, that's doing things, whether that be a coach. See, for me, I had a history teacher, Mr. Pringle, that was instrumental in my life. He was in high school. My third grade teacher, Mr. McNichols. When I broke my leg, I talk about in the book, I was in the hospital all of 1966, almost an entire year.
Really?
Because I broke my leg twice, in my fibia. I was in a cast. But what happened is Mr. McNichols believed in me, and he didn't want me to fail. And he would bring my homework to Cook County Hospital, and he would come out there every week, and he would grade it, he would give me the homework, and I passed the class because Mr. McNichols believed in me. That was positive, and Mr. McNichols was not an African-American man. He was a man who believed in me. And as I moved forward, my cousin married a guy named Ron. And Ron wasn't the nicest guy in the world, but he was the most energetic guy. In fact, he reminded me, in a sense, of Muhammad Ali. Not that he looked like Muhammad Ali, but he talked he talked a lot of stuff. He would always say what he was going to do. And when I met him, he worked at a supermarket as a meat cutter. And I would shop at that market. He was telling me, Byron, I'm going to go back to school, and I'm going to get my degree, my bachelor's, and then I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to buy a house. And everything that he did, said he was going to do, he did it. The man ran for office 3 times in the city of Chicago. He lost all 3 times, but his attitude about it was so great. But also, him winning or losing isn't what impacted me or influenced me the most. What influenced me the most is the fact that he did it. He bought a convertible. Now, you laugh at that, but I'm in the inner city. Black people don't buy convertibles in those days. Right? They didn't buy convertibles. I mean, they didn't have that hard top, durable. That's how we thought. He bought a convertible Impala. Man, loved it. So, as I said, though he wasn't the nicest guy in the world, I purposely, and I'm talking to the boys too and mothers, what man, what woman, what person in your life that are doing positive things. So if we can set aside who, their behaviors per se, if you don't like them, fine, but what are they contributing to life? What are they contributing to your family, to your neighborhood? Is that something you'd like to mimic? And so that's what helped me, and I think that's what's going to help these young boys and these mothers. If you don't have a father in the home, is there an uncle, is there a coach, is there a music teacher, is there an English teacher, is there someone in the neighborhood, in the family, that's doing something constructive?
And so I think what I'm hearing you say, there's a couple of different ways that the mothers of single parent home kids can help avoid the negative behaviors caused by the void. One is that the mother actively seeks a mentor type.
Yes.
Because if you don't actively seek, you were lucky. I'm guessing your mother didn't actively seek a male role model, but you filled your void that way.
Right.
But we need to have mothers understand that they need to actively seek. And number 2 is they have to actively find activities to fill that time.
Yes.
So there are things they can do.
But let me say this. The title of the book is Searching for Dad for a reason. And that's because I was always searching for a dad. My mother had a friend that she grew up with, and she was quick to tell me they're platonic. and he's passed away now, but his name was Brown. And he actually didn't live in Chicago. He lived in Cleveland. And he would come down. He called my mother Mickey. I'm sorry, Mucky. Her nickname was Mucky.
Okay.
And I didn't know that until they came, because she was a tomboy. And they climbed trees and those kind of things. And this guy was the best cook I'd ever seen until that time. Briskets, fish, all kinds of things. And I would watch this man in the kitchen. He'd take me to the store with him. He'd show me how to pick meats. He'd show me how to pick fish and look at the eyes and the gills. He'd show me cuts of meat. And today, I cook because of Brown. So when I say searching for dad, I envision that my dad would have been a good cook. I don't know that he would have been a good cook, but a part of that is I look for those positive attributes in the people around me. So I charge the boys as well, and then mothers to feed this to boys, have them look for positive attributes in people around them.
Even strangers can show positive attributes.
Even strangers can show positive
that moms
attributes.
can say, see, he just opened the door for that lady. That was the right thing to do.
That was the right thing to do. What do you think about that? And also, moms, talk to your kids. Have a conversation with them. Ask them, how are you feeling? What are you feeling? Is there anything I can do to help? One thing that we did at our session at the one church last semester is we allowed the boys to talk. We gave them an avenue by which to express themselves. Because you asked me earlier, did you and your mother talk about that? I did not. And by the time my mother and I talked about it, it was out of my anger and it was out of my frustration that I was being dismissed, if you will, and not taken seriously about something that was serious, i.e., my father, who is he, where did I come from, tell me about him. And finally, I began to do my homework and learn about him, and I sat down with her and began to ask questions that I already knew the answer to. And once she realized that she had to come clean, then we had a conversation.
Well, we can't count on all single-parent home kids to do that, unfortunately. So we have to help moms, empower moms to do
right.
that.
We have to empower moms to do that. We have to convince moms that, first of all, get rid of the guilt, Mom. Okay, get rid of the guilt. And what you have at hand now is your kid who doesn't have his dad, her dad, with them. So give them an avenue, give them a forum, give them a platform to have that conversation. And by you having that conversation with them, that also enables you to help meet their needs.
We've come towards the end of our actually fourth podcast on this series, and we certainly want to thank you for bringing this to our attention. We're becoming more sophisticated in understanding some of the behaviors in our classrooms, and encouraging our staff not to react in a traditional punitive way. Right. And so I want you to know that we ask our staff and our campus leadership to also listen to these podcasts, to listen to your message, because it helps humanize some of the behavior right. that the kids are exhibiting. Before we end up, let's go over the other three podcasts to encourage people who haven't heard them to go and listen to them. So our first podcast was on Searching for Dad, the 9 Steps. So we actively talked about your book.
Right.
Then the second one, we sort of started delving into some of the topics within the book. And the second podcast was How Angry Mama Drama Hurts Kids and What to Do Differently.
Yes.
And then...
Don't use your kid as a pawn.
That's right. And then the third one is Turning Boys into Productive Men with Character. And we touched a little bit on that, but I don't think that just one 30-minute podcast is enough to help moms know how to solve some of these lifelong dilemmas.
Right.
So that's why we're continuing our discussion on how to bring strategies and the need for it first.
Right.
Bring the need and then the strategies and how to help fill the void, how to keep those destructive behaviors from manifesting. And so we thank you for doing that. I know that we have at least one more podcast to do on how we can help our kids from single parent homes. And all I'll say about that is that this will involve another board member
Yes.
as well. So that will happen July 16th, and we look forward to that. So thank you, Mr. Ricks, for coming and sharing your life experience and turning it into such a positive thing, not only for you, but for a lot of other kids.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ask Dr. Be Good show. For more information on Legacy Preparatory Charter Schools, visit our website, legacypca.com, or call 469-249-1099. And remember to like us on Facebook, where we stream live weekly Tuesdays at 3 p.m.